when the road looks rough ahead and you're miles and miles from your nice warm bed. You just remember what your old pal said, son, you've got a friend in me. Yeah, you've got a friend in me.
Welcome and good morning. Our call to worship today is adapted from the words of Marnie Harmony. We gather this morning together, we whose journeys are always beginning, we whose mission always awaits us, we whose visions are bent on loving.
We gather as a community drawn together out of common needs and many hopes and dreams.
We gather together seeking meaning, yearning to understand life in all its dimensions as it challenges and expands, as it burdens, as it consoles and heals.
We gather together with questions, the kinds of questions that provoke us to the path of action.
We gather with tenderness, the kind of tenderness that can only be born from knowing human capabilities as well as human imperfections.
We gather with hope, the kind of hope that pulses on through uncertainty.
We gather wanting certainty and having none.
But we are wakeful to possibilities as we seek discernment and gentle judgment.
We gather thirsting. We gather drawn to our source, our Creator. Amen.
Good morning, everyone. If you haven't yet, please take a moment to silence your phones, then stand. Oh, I'll give you all a moment there to turn the ringers off. I forgot yesterday. I told everybody else to do it, and then I forgot to do it. Then stand in body or spirit. For our opening hymn, we're using the teal hymnals today. 1028, The Fire of Commitment.
From the light of days remembered burns a beacon bright and clear, guiding hands and hearts and spirits into faith set free from fear. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet the call on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise find fulfillment and our future can begin. From the stories of our living rings a song both brave and free, calling pilgrims still to witness to the life of liberty. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the dreams of youthful vision comes a new prophetic voice, which demands a deeper justice built by our courageous choice.
Good morning. Welcome to Community Unitarian Universalist Congregation at White Plains, New York, on unceded land formerly of the Lenape Nation. I'm Emily Economo, your worship associate this morning. Welcome back, Adam Kent. Welcome. And welcome all of you to this home of liberal religion. Here we affirm that it's a blessing that you were born. It matters what you do. Your experience of the divine is true, and you don't have to go it alone. I was told to turn the light on, but I think we're good. Okay. This is the first Sunday of autumn, signified by the single candle beside our chalice. It is also, as of sunset today, the first night of Rosh Hashanah. For me, it's a sign of fall because I've already been to the Greek festival last weekend. We give a special welcome to our visitors. If you're new today and are comfortable being recognized, please wave a hand so we may welcome you. Hi, Jim. If you're new here today online, please introduce yourself in the chat. Those online may find a link to the order of service on the website at cuucwp.org, and you'll find resources there as well. If you have a joy, sorrow, or milestone you'd like to share, you may write it in our Joys and Sorrows book on the table over there to the right, to my right. For those of you at home on Zoom, please enter it into the chat. Please make the first word joy, sorrow, or concern so we can pick up your words from the chat. This service follows a day-long workshop where about 80 people gathered to think about the past, the present, and the near future of this congregation as we begin the last year of our minister, Reverend Meredith, his ministry, and we begin to ponder what's next for our congregation. Today's service will be led by the Rev. Dr. Patience Stoddard, who is working with our self-assessment committee and she is our transitional consultant. Welcome to our pulpit, Patience. Our board member, Creighton Cray, board chair, will light the chalice now.
Good morning. Please join me in the chalice lighting words adopted by Jay Atkinson in your order of service. We invite those online to light a chalice or candle at home and read along from the order of service link on our website, cuucwp.org. We kindle the single flame of this chalice as a symbol of shared unity amid the richness of our diversity, as a beacon of hope for those whose lives are darkened by doubt, sorrow, or despair, as a visible sign of that divine spark that animates and guides us to fulfill our highest aspiration for ourselves, our community, and our world.
Spirit of life, known by many names, yet by no name fully known. We gather today with hopes and dreams and also with fears and wounds. As we share this worship service today on the theme of change and transitions, may we be reminded that all things come and go, that today's joys and today's sorrows will in time give way to those of tomorrow, and that those of us who have had strength to share today ought to do so while we can, and that those who are in need ought to allow ourselves to receive, for tomorrow those roles might well be reversed. Spirit of creation, energy of love that moves through all things. May we always be open to growth and change, to movement, to grace. In the name of all that is holy, and in all the holy names that have ever been uttered, and those that have not even yet been imagined, let us begin our time together with open hearts and welcoming spirit. Shalom.
Please pass the peace to one another, and if you're on the line, you can do passing of the peace on the chat. Yes, yes, that's what I'm going to do. How much time should I give it? Peace be with you. Yeah, I know. Some people feel like it's turned into a big coffee hour and to kind of take it down, but clearly people make a lot of money.
Anthony. Good morning. Mary Cobb has been with the choir longer than I've been here, and I've been here 21 years. Mary was at my interview for this position, so she's the first choir member that I met, and it was a wonderful experience. And not only has she been such an amazing voice and musician in the group all these years, but she's been the choral librarian, which is such a difficult job. I can't even tell you how hard it is, with everybody throwing music at you all the time from all different times, not just what we just did, but some, oh, I found a bunch of music that I just, it's a lot. And Mary has just been such an inspiration to me musically. She's been such a foundation in our choir, in the soprano section. And I just wanted to thank you. And we're going to miss you. Oh. Creighton?
So, Mary, we put a plaque together for you. It says, in great appreciation for your many years of outstanding participation in the choir of Community Unitarian Universalist Congregation in White Plains, and her tireless volunteer work as choral librarian. And Lisa and I signed it, so thank you very much.
Let us come into a moment of quiet. As a fellow musician, the rests are as important as the notes. From our books of joys and concerns this morning, a joy for all who make beautiful music here, choir, piano, and voices. Just coincidentally, the joy from online is Paul Bear Hartman watching Grandma sing on Zoom.
Let us spend some moment in spoken meditation and prayer. Dear wholeness, Spirit of life that holds us all, Spirit that moves through us like the wind and gives us a place to stand like the earth. We come together with joys and sorrows, spoken and unspoken. We come together today in a spirit of celebration as we recognize the gift that Mary Cobb has been to this congregation, and the gift of all the people who come to this sanctuary to find peace, to explore meaning, to find a way to change the world for the better. We take a moment this morning to listen to our hearts speak, to find those places where our sorrows rest, and remember that we are not alone. To think of the ways in which we are grateful to life itself, and grateful to so many people who have held us through the dark times and rejoiced unsung with us through the good times. As we mark the high holy days, whatever our religious traditions, may we, in these days of change and transition, as the leaves begin to turn and the days darken, may we take some time to think of those things that we regret, those mistakes or harsh words for which we can make amends. May we remember also those things we have done to reach out and be of help, to somehow extend a little bit more light into this world. And may we remember that while we are all imperfect, and while we all make mistakes, and while unfortunately we too often hurt people that we love, or say something that wounds someone that we barely even know, that this is the season of reconnection. This is the season to hold lightly, but in our awareness, those things that have been a part of our lives this year. And in conclusion, let us share together some simple words of confession. We have sometimes done things that we ought not to have done, and left undone things we ought to have done. But there is much good in us, and strength, and time to forgive ourselves and others, to reach out and touch, and to begin again. In response, the choir will sing for you, Haina Matov. Behold how good it is for brothers and sisters to dwell together in unity. I'd like to share with you a responsive reading. It's in your gray hymnal, and it's also up there, so you may not need your gray hymnal. It's reading number 632. 632 or 4? 4. All right. You know, just in case, I'm going to read it out of the hymnal. Now is the time for turning. The birds are beginning to turn and are heading once more towards the south. The animals are beginning to turn to store their food for the winter. For leaves, birds, and animals, turning comes instinctively. It takes an act of will for us to make a turn. It means breaking with old habits. It means losing face. It means starting all over again. And this is always painful. It means recognizing that we have the ability to change. These things are hard to do. God, help us to turn from callousness to sensitivity, from hostility to love, from pettiness to purpose, from envy to contentment, from carelessness to discipline, from fear to faith. Revive our lives as at the beginning.
We now come to the offertory. This month, our Share the Plate funds go to the Interfaith Council for New Americans of Westchester, a coalition of local congregants that welcomes refugees resettled into our area. You may use the donate button on our website, the QR code on your paper order of service, or make a check out to CUC with the memo line Share the Plate ICNAW. The donate button is also helpful for your pledge or the ministerial's discretionary fund. Recognizing the gifts we have all received and the gift that is this community, the offering will now be gratefully given and gratefully received.
Good morning. In recognition of the Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah, which will begin at sundown tonight, this is an arrangement of a traditional Hasidic song by the Detroit-born composer Paul Schoenfeld.
Wow, thank you. Those of you who came to the gathering yesterday will notice some of those questions were ones that were being asked several times over. So. The reading today is it's called Thresholds, and it is from the book To Bless the Space Between Us by the Celtic writer and spiritual leader John O'Donohue. To change is one of the great dreams of every heart. To change the limitations, the sameness, the banality, or the pain. So often we look back on patterns of behavior, the kind of decisions we make repeatedly and that have failed to serve us well. And we aim for a new and a more successful path or way of living. But change is difficult for us. So often we opt to continue the old pattern rather than risking the danger of difference. We are also often surprised by change that seems to arrive out of nowhere. We find ourselves crossing some new threshold we had never anticipated. Like spring secretly at work within the heart of winter, below the surface of our lives, huge changes are in fermentation. And we never suspect a thing. Then, when the grip of some long, enduring winter mentality begins to loosen, we find ourselves vulnerable to a flourish of possibility. I like that term. We find ourselves vulnerable to a flourish of possibility. And we are suddenly negotiating the challenge of a threshold. At any time, you can ask yourself, at which threshold am I now standing? At this time in my life, what am I leaving? Where am I about to enter? What is preventing me from crossing my next threshold? What gift would enable me to do it? A threshold is not a simple boundary. It is a frontier that divides two different territories, rhythms, and atmospheres. Indeed, it is a lovely testimony to the fullness and integrity of an experience or a stage of life that it intensifies towards the end into a real frontier that cannot be crossed without the heart being passionately engaged and woken up. At this threshold, a great complexity of emotions comes alive. Confusion, fear, excitement, sadness, hope. This is one of the reasons such vital crossings were always clothed in ritual. It is wise in your own life to be able to recognize and acknowledge the key thresholds, to take your time, to feel all the varieties of presence that accrue there, to listen inward with complete attention until you hear the inner voice calling you forward. Now, the time has come to cross. I want to begin my reflection with you this morning by saying congratulations. Yesterday, about 80 members and friends of this congregation gathered in one room and talked about the past and the present and the immediate future of this congregation. They did so with energy which didn't wane for almost the 7 hours that we were together. I bet a lot of us were pretty tired when we got home, right? I went to bed before 9 o'clock. I haven't done that in years. We talked about the good times in this congregation, and we mentioned some of the not so good times. We talked about what is going well and what is not going as well as you wished. And we talked about why. We looked to understand those ups and downs, those moments of triumph, those things that we regret. And we did so on a beautiful day when most of us yearn to be outside doing chores or spending time with family, friends, or just plain sitting outside and breathing. But you came. You came because you care about this congregation, because you realize you are this congregation. And for the many of you who care and didn't come, you were there in spirit. And there's lots of sharing that can happen around what happened yesterday, because it will continue to happen as more and more possibilities of deeper conversations arrive. It says a lot to me about the strength and vitality of CUUC. And you can see evidence of the work that was done still on the walls, hoping it didn't fall down, in the fellowship hall after the service. So take some time to linger and see some of what we did in the timelines on one wall and the map of all the aspects of the life of this congregation on another. However, with all that energy and with all the optimism and the sincerity that was evident in that workshop, the next few years will not be easy for you, I suspect. For you are entering into a time of transition when your minister of the last 9 years will, at the end of the year, be leaving, and a new interim minister and then a settled minister will be chosen. And so you will be going through this time of transition, and during it, and changes will happen. Some are inevitable, some will be chosen, some not planned at all. Some are probably already here. To experience change, one need not do more than step outside the door. Autumn is upon us, our nights are turning cooler, and soon the leaves will change and then fall. Nature is a constant reminder that life is change and that life cannot continue without change. Autumn is a beautiful season, and I sometimes think of it as nature's gift to us before the long, cold days of winter. But autumn is also a living metaphor of change. When I talk about the leaves falling in autumn, exploring this theme, I often remember a story that was told to me in a chapel service when I was a student at Harvard over 3.5 decades ago. This one has stuck with me through all that time. There was a woman in my class who took a week off because her grandfather was dying, and she wanted to be with him during that rite of passage. And when she came back, she was assigned to do the chapel. And she had some trouble sort of re-entering, because the 10 days that she was gone was when the trees hit their fullest amount of color and beauty. And by the time she returned after a big rain, most of them were brown and lying upon the ground. And she said that she had this overwhelming urge to take those leaves off the ground and get Scotch tape and stick them up on all those branches, because autumn is her favorite season, and somehow she had missed it. She'd missed the beauty, and she wanted it back. That image of somebody trying to turn back the clock, sticking up those leaves on the branches, has remained with me and reminds me of the times in my own life when I haven't wanted to accept change, when I wanted to turn back the clock. I wonder if you have had such times as well. Times when perhaps the changes around you and inside you were so confusing, so painful, that you felt you would do almost anything to avoid them, if only you could. If only. I suspect we've all had those feelings sometime in our lives, and I know I have. And shockingly, somewhat, I have experienced some of these feelings not only when things have changed in a way I didn't want them to, but when things have changed in the way I did. A story again. I'm a bit of a storyteller, you'll find. One day, 2 to 3 week period in June in 1986, all my dreams came true. I graduated from divinity school. A few days later, I was ordained by the First Parish Church of Bedford, New Hampshire, and began my life and identity as a Unitarian Universalist minister. I bought my first house with the man I loved, and a few days later married him. And I began my first ministry in a small church in Vermont. Ordination, graduation, marriage, first house, I forgot moving, and my first called ministry, all in 3 weeks. How did I feel? Thrilled, happy, all my dreams had come true. I was so exhausted and confused, I stayed in bed nearly 2 days. I'm sure my husband thought, oh my gosh, what is happening here? I only came out of my overwhelmed funk when somebody knocked on my door unexpectedly and brought me a whole bunch of blueberry muffins, still warm from the oven, in the congregation I had yet to formally join. A little bit of grace helped me put my life back in perspective. When I was thinking about that, it was very confusing to me. How could positive change make me feel so weird and unsettled? A book named Transitions, Making Sense of Life's Transitions by William Bridges, helped me to understand myself better. Bridges contrasts change with transition. Change, he said, is situational, whereas transition is psychological. Change is often the result of reaching a goal or taking another step on the board of life. Certainly, I didn't regret a single step that I had taken. But transition involves internal change as well as external. In Bridges' words, the transition itself begins with letting go of something that you have believed or assumed, some way you've always been or seen yourself, some outlook on world or attitude towards others, some way of walking through your daily life. Therefore, whatever your response to any specific change, it is important to remember that no change happens without some loss. And losses are painful, even those losses we have chosen. Something must end before a new thing can be born. That may be why Bridges notes, you can sometimes feel fully prepared for change, but find out you were not at all prepared for transition. What happens on the outside may be very different from what's happening on the inside. For surprisingly, the impact of a transition upon us does not necessarily bear any relation to the apparent importance or negative or positive nature of the change that triggered the transition. Stepping over that threshold is scary, no matter how much one desires to get to the other side. Scott Peck, a psychiatrist and author of the well-read book, The Road Less Traveled, uses the metaphor of a map to illustrate how we move through change and why it can be so challenging. As we live our lives and make our choices in response to outer events or inner urgings, we create an internal map that shows us where we've been and where we want to go, but more importantly becomes a reflection of who we think we are. As things and attitudes change, as our sense of self evolves, our maps need revision. Sometimes these revisions come slowly, naturally, without our realizing it. I still remember when my mother was in her, I think, late 70s, and I was visiting her. She said to me, you know, honey, the most amazing thing has happened. I looked in the mirror the other day and found out I'm no longer a blonde. I have gray hair. I'm beginning to experience that myself. But she said it just happened all at once. And we blondes do have an advantage. I look at Terry. We slowly, it looks like highlights for a long time until all of a sudden everything's a highlight. Other times these revisions come after much hard work, graduating from college or getting a new position at work or developing a garden. Sometimes they are thrust upon us by a diagnosis, or through losing a job, or ending a marriage, or experiencing a pandemic. Scott Peck writes, the process of making revisions, particularly major revisions, is painful, and sometimes it can be even excruciatingly painful. For revising our maps not only entails adding on new routes and destinations, but erasing those which no longer serve us, or which are simply no longer possible. When a congregation changes leadership, when one minister leaves and another arrives, maps change. They need to change. Things that used to be part of worship nearly every week may no longer happen. New ways of saying and doing things becomes a new norm. For some, these changes may be entirely welcome, but for others, they are deeply discomforting. And even when the change seems to be something one would wish to have, it's uncomfortable learning new steps to a new dance. During these times of transition, it helps to become aware of where you're walking, of the steps that you do know, so that you can be more ready to accept a change of tune or a new pattern in something that has been a constancy. When we did the workshop together, we had a part of the workshop where we looked at certain objectives or goals, and then, we looked at a timeline of the history of the congregation over the last 30 years. The wall was full of sticky notes. And then we tried these in small groups to lift up things that you wanted to celebrate, things that went really well or met some kind of need. Journey groups came up in that conversation a lot. But we also talked about things that members of the congregation regretted, things that have been said that you wish could be unsaid, or something that happened that fell apart when you were hoping that you were moving forward. We called them prouds and sorries. And it wasn't until the report out from that exercise, which I must admit I've done with other groups several times before, that I realized that the wording itself was interesting. The reporters would stand up and read on their thing, and they say, "We're proud of this." We're proud of that. And then when they went to the other side of the thing, the words were, "We're sorry about this. We're sorry about that." And in those words, I felt the beginning of some healing, some movement, in my words, in my language, some movement of spirit in the room. So how might you best approach these next couple of years when you say goodbye to a minister who has brought so much to this congregation and await who's coming next, which won't come right away, and wonder about who that should be and how that will feel? How do you go through these couple of years of transition, knowing that things are changing and not knowing how that change will look or feel? I recommend talking with each other as often and as honestly as possible. Those of you who attended the workshop today showed how eye-opening and I hope heart-opening this process of honestly looking back can be, and how sharing dreams and goals can open up new possibilities. Simply hearing what is important to another person can open up a new pathway and give rise to both and possibilities that perhaps one wasn't aware of before. Dare to speak the truth to one another, your truth, but do so without blame or judgment. Those words are part of the fourfold path articulated by the author Angeles Arian. Some of you may know her work. In it is what you can easily boil down to a very simple formula that I have found personally extremely helpful in my life. As a matter of fact, a copy of it is over my desk at home. Simply put, the fourfold path says, show up, engage, Pay attention to what has heart and meaning. In these important times, there's a lot of small stuff that comes up. Try not to pay too much attention to it. But do, for heaven's sakes, pay attention to the stuff that feels like big stuff. Speak your truth without blame and judgment. And then the hardest for me, let go of the outcome. I'm going to give you just a couple of examples real quick as I close my thoughts this morning. The show up is already happening. You're here today, 80 people were here yesterday, and I have a feeling that that's going to continue. Pay attention to what has heart and meaning, and this is the one that I really wanted to talk about because it was one of the biggest lessons that I learned when I was a 2-year intern minister in Bedford. And that is that what has heart and meaning may not be at all what one thinks. In that it can, for example, come in the shape of a stove. Actually, it was more than a stove. It was a new kitchen. The congregation had raised money for a new kitchen, and they hadn't quite decided what they wanted, but there was a lot of talk about how great it would be to get rid of this old stove and put in some more modern kitchen appliances that would be more helpful. So one day, the new member joined and had a long talk with the minister, and he found out she was a well-known kitchen designer and said, well, perfect way to get involved. Why don't you redesign our kitchen and buy a new stove? Well, does anyone have a guess how that was received by the kitchen ladies? Not well. I mean, we can joke about it. It led to a rift so severe that some questioned that this ministry would last. People, it turned out, who had brought the old stove had also painted the kitchen, torn up the tiles and put them down themselves, had spent literally weeks 10 years before out of a gutted old place creating a kitchen that worked. That kitchen and those relationships that were formed during its creation had profound meaning to those women, primarily women, who had done that work together. And somehow they felt that all that was discounted, that they no longer had their contribution recognized, that they no longer were important. They were truly hurt by this. And so when I did my parting remarks to the congregation I had come to love, I thanked them for all the gifts that they had given me. And then I said, and thank you for the lesson of the stove. I'm not touching anything in the kitchen in my next church. But by then, we could talk about it. By then, they could laugh about it because people began to understand that what was meaningful to one person could be just something to be improved upon to another. That's why this listening is so important. And why the speaking the truth without blame or judgment also is important. In our daily lives, certainly in church life, which underneath it all carries so much meaning. It's really easy to upset somebody by saying the wrong names, by calling something by another name, by using the wrong pronoun, by missing an important date on the spiritual calendar that's important to some people, and feels by not recognizing it that their faith isn't as important. There are so many ways that we bump into each other and step on each other's toes. And really and truly, I believe that our first obligation is to say ouch. And our second is to be able to sit down with somebody and say, here's, I think, why that bothers me. And then for the other person to say those magical words, I'm sorry. I didn't know. There is so much talk about diversity everywhere in this congregation all the time that I have been talking to people here, and I think it's because we don't do it as well as we want to do it. But you know, there's another kind of diversity besides social and ethnic and economic. There's the diversity of each and every one of us who hold different things as important, who have different patterns, different identities in the congregation. All of us are different. And as long as we walk mindful of that and talk about it, the amount of connection and the depth of your relationships with one another and the strength of this congregation will only grow. Transitions are a wonderful time to do that. And the last is let go of outcome. Don't force your way. It may be your way, but it may not be other people's way. Don't get so attached to a specific solution to a problem that you stop listening and that you don't open your heart and your mind to a possibility that you'd never even thought of that would meet the same end. For information is always revealing itself. And someday something may happen totally unexpected, as small as a bunch of warm blueberry muffins, that will change your sense of well-being and rightness, that will open a new door that you didn't know existed. We are living in times of rapid change. I, myself, an old Yankee, don't like much of it. Thank you very much. My husband spent this morning talking about how smart you were to have Q codes or whatever these things are in the back of your program. Look, he said, this is really, you know, and I'm like, one more thing to have to deal with. But I have great confidence in this congregation. You've had good ministry. You have a lot of movement, wonderful social justice actions, journey groups that have woven through, and a gorgeous spiritual sacred space around you. I don't worry about you going through this transition, but I want you to pay attention to how you feel, to what you value, and even more so to listen to other people and what they value. And together you'll find new and creative ways to embrace this change and to begin that new beginning. Let's close with hymn, We Are Building a New Way.
Please rise in body or spirit for our last hymn, 1017, in the teal hymnal or on your screen.
We are building a new way. We are building a new way. We are building a new way, feeling stronger every day. We are building a new way. We are working and be free. We are working to be free. We are working to be free. Hate and greed and jealousy. We are working to be free. We can feed our every need. Now, we can feed our every need. Start with love, plant his seed. We
Our closing words are also from John O'Donohue. In out-of-the-way places of the heart where your thoughts never think to wander, this beginning has been quietly forming, waiting until you were ready to emerge. For a long time, it has watched your desire, feeling the emptiness growing inside you, noticing how you willed yourself on, still unable to leave what you had outgrown. It watched you play with the seduction of safety and the gray promises that sameness whispered, heard the waves of turmoil rise and relent, and wondered, would you always live like this? Then the delight. When your courage kindled and you stepped onto new ground, your eyes young again with energy and dream, a path of plenitude opening before you. Though your destination is not yet clear, you can trust the promise of this opening. Unfurl yourself into the grace of beginning that is at one with your life's desire. Awaken your spirit to adventure. Hold nothing back. Learn to find ease in risk. Soon you will come home to a new rhythm, for your soul senses the world that awaits you.
Some announcements this morning. A couple of things specific to newcomers, or if you're fairly new with us. After service, our Director of Religious Education, Tracy Brenneman, invites visitors and newcomers to a short information session from 11:30 to 12 in room 43 in the green hallway. Come learn more about the year ahead. Newcomers and new members are invited to a welcoming barbecue next Sunday evening at the parsonage. Come learn more about us while we get to know you better. You can RSVP with Jane Dixon. And we're still doing the hexagon pieces of identity with the RB program as well. What I'm picking up on so much in what we did yesterday and in our survey is how much you love community and to connect. So I'm going to whip through these announcements, because the ways that you can connect is you can cook tomorrow, you can help get lunch bags, you can dance on Wednesdays and Fridays, you can become part of parents and the new teen group on Wednesday night. You can join a Black, Indigenous, and Person of Color meetings on Monday, October 3rd through the UUA. You can be part of this beautiful grounds next Saturday. You can join the Social Justice Fair next Sunday. You can come sing with the choir anytime, especially on the 9th. Just come sing once at our open house. You could become an usher one day. You could host a coffee hour one week. And you can come to the auction on November 19th. That's it.
I'm exhausted. Please join me in saying the chalice distinguishing words. As we extinguish the chalice here, all of the chalices that were lit jointly can now be extinguished. We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of love, the warmth of community, and the fire of commitment. These we will carry with us until we meet again.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the
those of you online, thank you for joining us today. There is a coffee hour online. You can find the link to the coffee hour, the Zoom room in the chat. And please join us for coffee hour after the service and take a look at the walls of the sanctuary to see some of what was accomplished yesterday. If you missed the workshop and have questions about it or would like to add some of your own thoughts, please see a member of the Self-Assessment Committee, me, Emily, Al Roki, Jim Walkup, Terry Kung, and Mary Kingsley. Thank you.